Welcome to today's Military and Aerospace Electronics webinar, Strategies for Success, Building a Flexible Aerospace and Defense Supply Chain, sponsored by Smith in Houston. I'm John Keller, Chief Editor of Military and Aerospace Electronics. Aerospace and defense products are designed to operate for decades, yet the components inside often have much shorter life cycles. These mismatched timelines pose risks to program continuity, maintenance, and readiness. To stay ahead, organizations must build resilient and diversified supply chains that ensure critical parts always are available to keep missions on track. A strong supply chain depends on strong partners. Effective suppliers anticipate issues such as parts obsolescence, shortages, shifting trade policies, and evolving government regulations. Working with partners who understand the complexities of the aerospace and defense ecosystem can reduce risk and maintain consistent access to high quality components. Our presenters today are Tim McQuaid, Managing Director of Aerospace and Defense Systems at Smith, and Allison Levine, Senior Director of Aerospace and Defense at Smith. This webinar will outline proven strategies for future proofing supply chains with a focus on quality assurance and trade compliance. From vendor managed inventory models to tailored obsolescence plans, these presentations will guide the way to proactive long-term solutions that support uninterrupted sourcing throughout the entire product lifecycle. Key points of today's webinar are best practices for long-term lifecycle management, methods for ensuring quality from brokers and distributors, and how to future-proof supply chains with consistent, reliable sourcing. If you have any technical difficulty during today's session, please submit it to the questions window and our technical experts will help you. We recommend disabling any pop-up blocking software or extensions in your browser, as these can cause issues with the webinar player. We welcome your questions during today's event and will answer as many as we can. So please feel free to send in your questions at any time by typing your questions into the Q&A tech support window on the side of your screen and hit the submit button. To refer a colleague to today's discussion, share it on social media, or access event resources, click the icons on the left side rail of your screen. Today's discussion is being recorded and will be available on the Military and Aerospace Electronics website within the next 24 hours. You'll be notified by email when the archive is available. So let's get started with Tim McQuaid, Managing Director of Aerospace and Defense Business at Smith. Tim?
Hello, everybody. Happy holidays and nice to meet y'all. As John had said, my name is Tim McQuaid. I'm the Managing Director of Aerospace and Defense here at Smith, based in Manhattan, New York, here in our local sales office. I've been with Smith for about 15 years and have extensive experience working with large defense contractors and their subcons on supply chain solutions. Would like to also introduce my colleague, Allison Levine.
Thanks, Tim. I am Allison Levine, and I've been with Smith for about 5 years now. Been in the industry for almost 4 decades. It's kind of scary to say. Extensive experience, obviously, within the independent market and aerospace and defense.
Great.
And working with Tim out of our New York office.
Longer in the industry than I've been alive, sorry to say, Allison.
You don't have to rub that one in.
Well, thank you everybody for being here. And today we're going to be giving an overview of approaching the open market and working with open market or broker sources within the A&D electronic supply chain. First and foremost, wanted to provide a quick overview or explanation of the differences of a broker or a franchised or authorized distributor. Firstly, I want to break down the term broker. versus an independent distributor. A broker may be a smaller firm with limited capabilities, warranties, testing services, or financial support, or global sourcing access. On the other hand, an independent distributor is a larger firm with extensive history, financial capital, testing services, third-party certifications, a global footprint, and an extensive reach into the global market to source parts from vetted or trustworthy avenues outside of direct contracts with the chip factories. The benefits of working with a large independent distributor include extensive services, programs, and offerings, a worldwide view of supply and demand, data points in regards to pricing, and the flexibility to navigate through all of this to fit our customer needs. Now, a franchise distributor has direct contracts with the chip factories, large inventory holding, and while you can typically rely on part quality, they may lack the flexibility in pricing, inventory holding, or scheduling and programs. Now, of course, independent distributors have always been a last resort for aerospace and defense contractors, as the preference is always to buy from factory direct or through authorized distribution. But as we know, there are times when this is not possible. And hopefully after this seminar, you will find various ways to work with independent distributors outside of your spot part shortages and your spot obsolescence needs. So now that y'all know Allison and I, and yes, I'm in New York, but I do still say y'all, since I spent about 4 years with Smith in Austin, Texas, would like to just provide a quick overview of Smith and who we are as an independent distributor. So we are an independent distributor who ranks annually as the largest in the world with multi-billion dollars in yearly revenue. We have been in business for over 40 years and are based in Houston, Texas, with a global footprint of operational hubs all over the world. This includes operational and test facilities in Houston, Amsterdam, Hong Kong, and Singapore, and more than 14 sales and purchasing locations spanning across North, Central, and South America, as well as Europe and Asia. To sum up our business model quickly, we help electronics manufacturers across many industries, including industrial, medical, automotive, consumer, computing, AI, hyperscalers, cloud, and of course, within the aerospace and defense arena. We help them with supply chain solutions while mitigating risk in navigating the open market. We help with semiconductor and computing hardware shortages, obsolescence issues, long lead time parts, cost savings, testing services, inventory holding programs, obsolescence management programs, and last time buy services. We preach our flexibility and financial capabilities to meet our customers at their pain points within their supply chain. Here at Smith, the A&D supply chain is viewed as very specialized versus the other industries we work in. Of course, there is always an intensive focus on quality, certifications, and testing procedures. There is also a larger focus within the A&D arena on obsolescence versus other industries that may have shorter life cycles throughout their programs. Obsolescence is an issue that is not only not going away, but a growing concern within this industry. We've actually seen the rate of obsolescence and shortages among semiconductors growing as chip life cycles shorten due to original component manufacturer consolidation, quicker technological advancements, and profitability determinations to move on to the newer and next generation and more efficient components, and a growing shift towards commercial off-the-shelf components versus military-grade components, as well as, more prevalent now than ever, regulatory changes, geopolitical issues, and natural disasters. So I'd like to move on to the next slide and let Allison take it over.
So today we want to focus on 4 key strategies for aerospace and defense to manufacturers to focus on navigating the open market and working with independent distributors. The first one is anticipating potential disruptions in your electronic supply chain, which already mentioned seems to be not only inevitable, but increasing throughout the market. Forecasting and stockpiling, or holding more of a buffer stock on programs for critical components as opposed to more of a lean inventory carrying strategy. Lean inventory being a good thing, but also a bad thing at times. Ensuring you're partnering with the right open market suppliers, and also what constitutes a reliable partner.
So So aerospace and defense contractors need to be more proactive than ever in building an efficient and stable component supply chain. As mentioned, obsolescence is not going anywhere and should actually be a growing concern for manufacturers, especially in the A&D industry. Life cycle tracking. The count of part change notifications and end-of-life notices are growing from manufacturers, with shorter time periods for last time buy placements and shorter periods of ship dates. We also have seen an increasing failure rate from factories in filling last time buy demand. Customers need to accurately be able to take a more aggressive approach on purchasing, not only forecasted needs, but perhaps buffer stock when last time buys are available. Utilize independent distributors to track part change notifications and EOL notices to ensure nothing is missed. Many independent distributors, including Smith, now have portals and software programs to help track this and communicate with their customers on any parts from their BOM that may be going end of life.
Hey, Tim, and I want to interject on that also. There's a lot of programs out there, a lot of different scenarios where customers are getting end-of-life notices, either NRND notices, completely end-of-life, lifetime buy notices, but so many go missed. Maybe not missed, but then there's a spike in demand after they place their lifetime buy. So adding another layer to that is definitely going to put almost a foolproof solution to that.
Sure. And we'll talk a little bit more about how Smith might be able to help with those last time buys as well when the time comes. Sourcing support. Leverage the flexibility and global sourcing capabilities from your independent distributors to secure parts in shortage or obsolescence component needs for both immediate production needs and also buffer stock. As mentioned, franchise distributors do indeed carry large-scale inventory on active components, but as lead time stretch and factory and franchise stock depletes, franchise may not be able to support parts. As we saw throughout the pandemic chip shortage, franchises were not able to match customer demand with supply. We've seen a number of shortages since the pandemic as well on certain lines, and independent distributors are still able to find a product and source through many trusted avenues, including open market sources, contract manufacturer, and other OEM access, as well as a global view into franchise distribution stock that some customers, especially here in the United States, might not have access to. One thing to note is we see a lot of times where our customers, we encourage them not to be Google supply chain experts, right, Allison? And there are many times where they're looking for obsolete parts and they're very desperate and they're using Google to try to locate stock. And a lot of times this subjects them to untrustworthy sources or, for lack of a better term, imaginary stock, right? We've seen times where customers looking for a part, they Google it, and you have a supplier in China showing 1 million pieces of a $300 part in stock is available.
And that goes along what I've always preached to my customers, to anybody involved in supply chain in here, is to always be proactive instead of reactive. If you're reactive, you're going to get into those situations for sure.
Right. Independent distributors, we can also help with alternate and cross parts. We have a very large database of customers that commonly provide part needs along with approved courses and crosses and alternate parts. We can tap into this database to help customers that may only have one part spec'd in on an AVL to identify possible crosses or other manufacturers or different part types that they can use. You can also utilize us for last time buys and buffer stock. Here at Smith, we've actually created programs in handling last time buys, either directly with the manufacturer or authorized distribution for customers. Now, this is beneficial for many reasons, including, first off, of course, you're guaranteeing that you secure the stock that you need for the life cycle of your program. But it also allows Smith or an independent distributor to manage the inventory costs and financial burden, all while ensuring the product is properly stored, handled, and treated for what could be a number of years. And that plays into flexible and quality warehousing, where you need to ensure that your independent distributors have a number of global warehouses to ship and hold stock across the world. Ensure that your independent distributor warehouses are fully secure, ESD, humidity, and temperature controlled, and even a step further, perhaps have capabilities such as nitrogen storage to ensure long-term storage quality and die banking capabilities.
So independent distributors have a much different view of the market as opposed to franchise distributors. Open market activity and insight to global customer demand are an early indicator to future market conditions, trends, and supply chain disruptions. Access to large data points, pricing history, and demand structures from customers also help independent distributors help their customers to anticipate those shortages, understand what's really going on within the open market versus through distribution or the factory. I mean, Tim, how many times have we seen or heard of customers' contact within franchise is telling them everything's okay? It's really not.
Sure. Well, I think it's reminiscent recently about the DDR4 DRAM and memory module market, where an obsolescence notice came out from Micron, Samsung, and Hynix that DDR4 memory was basically going to be obsolete soon. The initial feeling was that many customers would not be impacted as there was sufficient supply in the market and most customers had already moved on to DDR5, which is the newer generation memory. However, Smith saw a very large influx of DDR4 demand pour in and let us know that the impact was indeed much bigger. A global view of market availability versus demand helped us to know that price would soon be increasing drastically. We were able to advise our top customers that they really should get ahead of this trend and start buying any forecasted needs and buffer stock immediately. We were very ahead of the curve on that, and of course, we've seen price increase substantially over the last number of months as supply dwindles. We were also very ahead of the curve on the recent next period geopolitical issue, as our market intel helped us to advise customers to immediately begin securing stock for near-term production needs. Many independent distributors share market intelligence reports with their key customers. Here at Smith, we release a monthly report to advise our customers on current market conditions, trends, and possible future issues in the market to allow our customers to make educated and proactive decisions.
Tim, that, giving our scope, our point of view, I think is invaluable for anybody in supply chain. If you're getting just a scope or a view into what franchise distribution is seeing or direct with component manufacturers, that's so limited to what they see versus the open market. We can see so much more, measuring demand that's coming from multiple industries, any overlap. There's so many components that are overlapped within using in aerospace and defense and still used in other markets. So if it's not specifically towards an industry, they may not hear it. But if we see it and it's globally, it interconnects with all these industries and we see the same demand from our A&D customers, it gives us the opportunity to alert them.
Sure. And, we're always happy as well. I mean, we've had customers reach out just for historical pricing trends on certain specific parts or certain lines. And, I think the information and the data that we hold here over, really a 40-year period is pretty invaluable.
I can hear Jennifer Kabara in my ear going, "We're a data company." Right. Truly we are. Going on into the next slide, stockpiling critical components. I think that gets a negative connotation because so many people feel that if others are stockpiling, that takes away from others. But I think that in a strategic level, stockpiling critical components can be kind of a strategic solution to covering any type of potential shortage, any type of shortage that could be brought on by the customer themselves, meaning that they had a spike in demand that they didn't anticipate. So stockpiling those components, making sure that you always have enough on hand, it's going to definitely help mitigate some of those impacts through obsolescence and maybe just the fact that they're long lead time. Customers should always identify their critical component needs and and strategize a way to secure and hold the inventory. So especially on parts that normally have no alternates or costly board redesigns. I mean, there's strategic ways to protect yourself from these unfortunate events that do happen. It's the nature of the beast in this business. Independent distributors with large financial capabilities are very flexible in their vendor managed inventory programs. Here at Smith, we have a customer portal where the customer can log in, view their inventory levels, place shipment requests to any one of their locations or their subcons locations, or even request Smith to help sell off some of that inventory should it end up being excess at the end of the program or even during the program if it ends up being a change in direction or a change in demand. Smith being as large as we are, we have that global network. We have our fingers in with almost every industry. So it's easy for us to, I don't want to say that a guarantee that we can always move product, but the chances are we're going to be pretty good at it. All of this to say stockpiling critical components may help to mitigate future needs to actually go in instead of going into the open market to secure end-of-life product at many times, substantially higher prices and with maybe no traceability versus with traceability. So again, touting my being proactive versus reactive.
Right. And I think that's where also the Google supply chain experts come in, right? And customers get a little desperate. They're looking for any avenue to possibly find parts. And a lot of times those obsolete parts, they're going to be at a much higher cost than what the last time buy could have been.
Right. And that phone call usually starts off with, we can't buy from them, but can you? No, they're not a qualified supplier. Going into the demanding the highest quality, we talked about the difference between a broker and an independent distributor. You want to ensure that the companies you work with have the financial backing and the capabilities to support you for an extended period of time. Companies who view you as a long-term partner and do not want to just engage in one-off transactions here and there.
And, here at Smith, we've gone through many audits with prime defense contractors and large contractors. But all A&D manufacturers should have an extensive application, audit, and approval process. It's very important to have your quality and supply chain teams physically go out and visit the locations of the independent distributors for the application and the audit process. Go see their warehouse, meet the team.
That brings up a story in the back of my head that in a prior life with a prior company, we were being audited by a large manufacturer. And when the auditor had showed up at our facility, she was out of sorts, kind of frazzled. And she had just come from the place beforehand. And she said it ended up being a residential place, kind of in a seedy area. And she heard people in there. So she was knocking on the door. And I thought, God, I wouldn't have even knocked on the door. I probably would have left. But it really got her frazzled. And it just goes to show that, it's everything you see on the internet is not true. So that point you just made about auditing and physically visiting your suppliers is so imperative.
Absolutely. And, in regards to that as well, one point I wanted to make is to stop auditing your independent distributors and your brokers like a franchise distributor or even a component manufacturer, right? It's something we see all the time. And this goes all the way down to terms and conditions that may even be flowed down to independent distributors that are many times not applicable. We've had some customers who try to impose terms and conditions of a spot shortage buy price and keeping that same buy price for future demand. Well, operating in the open market, pricing can be very volatile, right? Depending on supply and demand. So it's very difficult for us to lock in pricing from one spot buy to another. However, again, coming into play with purchasing extra buffer stock, right? Or scheduling. Yeah. Yes. and kind of locking in some pricing for your future demand.
So, demanding the highest quality from your suppliers, you need to make sure that your independent distributors are constantly evolving in their test methods, their processes, and their certifications. Here at Smith, we've been utilizing AI and have even developed proprietary equipment for visual inspection and testing that have really impressed our customers during audits.
Yeah, actually, Allison, I was a part of an audit recently, and we had utilized AI to develop a proprietary piece of equipment called Argus, which is a 100% visual inspection tool. And in a matter of minutes, we can inspect a full reel of parts for any discrepancies part to part, for any orientation issues or any anomalies from one part to another. And I know during this audit, the customer kept wanting to come back to this piece of equipment. Really blown away by it. So, all to say, you want to just make sure that your suppliers are constantly evolving and keeping up with marketing trends and finding new ways to better themselves, and in turn offer better service for you.
And just to put in a note of kudos to our ops department, our quality control department, our entire staff, our risk mitigation is in that audit you just spoke of was a large prime contractor. And from what the story that was told to me, I wasn't present at the audit, was that they were on the road auditing a number of brokers, that they were updating their list. And their goal was to limit that down to 3. And in that, we were the last stop on the chain. And at the end of that audit, they said that we catapulted all the way up to the top, not just for our AI tools, but our entire processes, our facilities, our operations team, our risk management, the amount of knowledge that we were able to show them that our entire team possesses was astounding to them. And the other thing that I'm just so proud of is to say that that team of auditing engineers from that prime gave our team a standing ovation at the end of that audit, which I thought that in my 38 years, I've never, ever, not that we saw audits way back when we were carving on, wood tablets or stone tablets, but when audits did start happening, I've never heard of a standing ovation. So kudos to our team. I think, that speaks volumes to the level of capabilities, abilities, and stringent processes we have in place.
Oh, and I think just from a high overview, right, you want to make sure independent distributors are looking at, make sure they have an in-depth quality control system that's documented and readily available for review during audits. Do they talk the talk or do they actually walk the walk?
Yeah.
Right. And, on top of that, a lot of independent distributors, they're also building up a vast bank of known good parts, or a golden sample library to be able to refer to during inspection and in testing, which is really great.
Mm-hmm.
Now, above and beyond visual inspection, your independent distributors that you're looking at, do they have in-house testing in addition to third-party testing partnerships for test procedures, including functional and authenticity testing?
You need to ensure that your independent partners have a vetted supply chain of their own. Do they constantly and continually audit their own suppliers, their own sources? Do they have their own vendor rating systems? And know that up front, they are buying from trusted sources to mitigate the risk.
Right.
It's so important to keep on and updating that. Just because somebody passes once doesn't mean that, things didn't happen and you started seeing things fall through.
Sure. Yeah. And here at Smith, for example, we have an in-house vendor rating system and have developed our supply chain network globally for over 40 years. We have boots on ground throughout Europe and Asia. We're constantly visiting and auditing our suppliers for quality and delivery parameters. Mm-hmm. So like we mentioned, it's important for A&D contractors to be in person auditing their suppliers. So it's also important for independent distributors to be doing the same with their supplier network as well. The first,
so important.
Yes, yeah. The first step in a secure supply chain is knowing that your independent distributors are buying from reputable global sources and receiving quality product at the onset. One question that we're asked quite a bit is how often do we receive in suspected counterfeit material? even though it is a very growing concern. Well, at Smith, the short answer is it's actually quite uncommon. And it starts with our vetted supplier base. Our suppliers know that we have very stringent rating and quality systems and do not take risks on any questionable product.
And adding to that rating system on that, Tim, is once somebody's been put what we call a no trade, it's not easy to get put back on. I've tried with some of them, and our team's very, very, adamant about who is added back on, who's not added back on, and there has to be, documented information to prove why they should be added back on. So, always taking that step to make sure that the sources we use are safe.
Quality needs to flow down the supply chain. Yes.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, here at Smith, we're the leader in the industry in regards to third-party certifications. I've always kind of joked that I always feel like we have a collection of certifications because we have so many. But in their own right, they're all valid, and you can't argue what they actually stand for and what they cover. Certifications on this level should be a baseline for any independent distributor somebody might be looking at to qualify as one of their sources that they want to use. You want to know, are their in-house labs ISO 17025 certified and carry the 6171 accreditation? We're seeing most of our customers to move to this procedure and test plan for their open market buys. So 6081 has been kind of melded into 6171. And to that point that, you understand the different levels of testing that are available through 6171 being 1, 2, and 3, moderate risk, low risk, moderate risk to high risk, and what those tests entail and what they give you. So it's important that your partner is knowledgeable above and beyond just being able to supply product.
And the 6171 accreditation, it's going to be harder for smaller brokers to obtain moving forward. You need an accreditation body to come in through, say, ISO 17025 and actually audit your test processes to this. And with 6081, kind of just basically referring to 6171 moving forward, you want to make sure that if you are working with any brokers, that they are keeping up with industry standards and are able to adopt this 6171 certification.
Right. And in addition to that, just starting off with having 9120 certification for traceability product and so forth. So there's a lot of processes and requirements through just 9120 that somebody should also have.
Sure. And then just, one step further, CTPAT, which ensures that your independent distributors are a trusted custom and border protection partner. Smith is able to import product very quickly, basically custom and border patrol. They trust that Smith, whatever we say is in the box is in the box. So we don't have parts stuck in customs, which could be for a very long period of time. So you want to make sure your independent distributors carry some sort of certification like this, as well as the TAPA FSR Level A, which has to deal with your handling, warehousing, and shipping processes for safeguarding your products, as well as being a member of GuideEP, right? Here at Smith, we report any suspected counterfeit parts to GuideEP, as well as destroying the product to make sure it does not re-enter the marketplace. It's also a great tool for referring to companies who may have been involved in incidents or to refer to previously suspected counterfeit parts that have been in the market.
And back on the TAPA certification, that also plays into the security within your facilities, and in all of our facilities are mirrored to operate the same way with their own certifications. It's something to pay attention to, as if you're working with a distributor that has multiple locations, you want to make sure that each location is certified on its own, because certification for one facility doesn't carry through to all facilities. Each facility needs to be audited to its own. On that security level, also, I'd like to mention in Houston, we have, the man trap. And that's when delivery trucks come there's two doors that enter the warehouse, and the one that goes into the warehouse is shut, secure, and then there's an open bay with another door, and that outside door is opened, and then freight can be delivered. And once it's accounted for and all the processes are done with the driver, that exterior door is now closed. Our staff is in the man trap with the product. And then once that's secure from the outside, we then open up the door to go into the interior. So extremely secure. We have off-duty police officers on hand. Unfortunately, it does call for that in our industry.
Okay, getting closer to the end. In addition, just want to make sure your suppliers have experience to navigate the aerospace and defense realm. As already mentioned, it's a very different industry from some others in dealing with government regulations, DFARS requirements, sourcing and testing procedures. I think one important bullet point here as well, and a growing concern, is compliance expertise.
Yeah, that's a constant need here at Smith, and a dedicated team to that. So in that, we also need to understand, and you as a OEM or a contractor need to make sure that your supplier is also flowing down all of those requirements to their suppliers, including not just the DFARS or compliance, but if there's a rated order, they need to be able to flow that down to their supplier. If it stops at your supplier, there's no flow down for real. I mean, it's kind of a moot point.
Sure. And governmental laws and regulations are constantly changing. Restrictions are growing as far as exporting product and ensuring compliance with U.S. laws. You want to ensure that your partners have a vast understanding and dedicated team to export compliance, mitigate your risk as far as involvement in anything that could come back to you.
Right. I mean, for example, one partner of Smith's will only sell their surplus or their excess inventory to us as they're aware of our export compliance procedure. They want to ensure that the product they sell does not end up in the wrong hands or anywhere in the world where it really should not, due to licensing or banning of certain product going into certain countries. We see this happen commonly. So you definitely don't want that in any way to, if something you've sold off as excess and it ends up in the wrong hands, in that investigation, it's definitely going to flow back and see that inventory came from maybe a large prime. And granted, the prime may not, suffer much other than damage control to your reputation. I mean, if we're so concerned on the buying side of all of these requirements and restrictions, you need to also consider them on the selling side.
And of course, knowledge of the ever-changing tariffs as far as countries impacted and changing tariff rates. We've helped to educate our customers on this and have assisted them with questions as far as current tariff costs on various HTS codes and product types. There was not too long ago where we were aware that some tariffs were increasing on a certain HTS code, and we were able to educate our customer to actually secure some buffer stock ahead of that date when the tariffs were going to increase. So it's changing daily. You want to make sure that your independent distributors are on top of the current rates and are advising you of that at the time of quotation.
For us, we've got an incredible tool built into our software that gives us real-time data for any tariffs associated with product, as well as reciprocal tariffs. And it's real-time data, so we can let our customers know up front, look, if this ends up being a COO of China, the tariff amount is going to be at this. A lot of times, being an independent distributor, we're not going to know the COO sometimes until we actually receive the product. We do our best to try and find out first, but we can at least lay out both the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. You want to make sure also that your partners have a dedicated sales team specifically for aerospace and defense. There's so many intricacies and knowledge that's needed to be able to work in this market. And, it's a very sensitive and experienced based industry. Working with these contractors to have familiarity with their sourcing requirements and the quality processes that they require, and understanding what those quality processes are. So, our team is constantly learning and updating that knowledge. I don't think there's ever an end to learning. We can always learn more and do better.
And you want to ensure that your independent distributors have strong financial backing and warranty programs, and that they're in it for the long haul. We had mentioned some brokers are looking for spot opportunities and they want to make a quick buck and then they're out of the picture. Well, you want your independent distributors to really be a long-term partner for you in your supply chain and be able to offer you services and programs beyond just those spot shortages.
With a dedicated team in-house to for your legal and your compliance. At Smith, we do have that team. Sometimes more than we feel it's necessary, but it's, in the end, it's to keep Smith safe, to keep our customers safe, and, to keep the world safe at the end of the day. We help keep customer supply chains operating from a risk mitigation standpoint, not only for quality, but for also trade and compliance. In that financial point you made, Tim, you also want to make sure that your suppliers are financially stable, that they're going to be in business for a long period of time. Working with somebody that maybe you don't understand what their financial abilities are, if there are problems with product, even a couple of months down the line, you want to make sure that they're financially able to step up and take care of any problems.
Sure. Yep. A long-term partnership.
Right. And that's what we're about at Smith.
So I believe that is the end. And, we hope you all learned a little bit about the independent distribution arena, how we believe A&D contractors should view the independent distribution market, and from our point of view, how we kind of view the market as well and how we believe we can help. So with that, I'll pass it back to John and would happily accept any questions that may be out there.
Okay, well, thank you, Tim and Allison. Wanted to remind our audience that we do welcome your questions. You can ask questions at any time. Send in your questions by typing your question into the Q&A tech support window on the side of your screen and hit the submit button, and we'll answer as many as we can. So I have a question from the audience here. You said in the presentation that manufacturers should lean on distributors for market intelligence. What kinds of market intelligence does Smith provide, and what would be relevant to aerospace and defense firms specifically?
I don't want to speak over you, Tim, but I think we both could probably interject on this. I think part of that is that a lot of this product is overlapping in industries. So we'll see a lot of product being used in aerospace and defense, commercial off the shelf, is also being used in other industries. And if those products are becoming short, just in abundance through other industries, it's going to leak over into A&D, and we're able to give our customers an early alert to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's something that we release in our market intelligence report every month as well, as far as, not only historical price trends, but also where we believe the pricing is going in the near-term future on certain product lines or parts, and also how some industries are operating currently.
Okay. A question from the audience. What trends do you expect to see next year as we head into 2026? Anything substantial?
Sure. As Allison mentioned, a lot of the aerospace and defense industry has moved to commercial off-the-shelf parts, right? Manufacturers aren't making as many military-grade specific components. So we see a lot of overlap into other industries. And what we expect for 2026, if we've learned anything in our industry, is to expect the unknown. There are so many geopolitical issues and trade wars that are currently happening that things can change very quickly. I mean, we had the recent Nexperia issue, which was a geopolitical issue that was caused, and it came about pretty much out of nowhere, and it was basically a flash in the pan of creating some serious near-term supply issues, especially for automotive manufacturers, but we saw it bleed into other industries as well. And of course, everybody is talking about AI consumption and data center build out for 2026. And we expect a lot of the computing hardware to be short in supply throughout 2026. So a lot of aerospace and defense customers that are using DRAM or processors or disk drives, we expect it to be very difficult, not only due to the supply consumption from those large AI companies, but also from manufacturers who are dedicating more of their production lines away from industries that are not AI. Right, a lot of the memory manufacturers are moving towards high bandwidth memory. A lot of the SSD manufacturers are moving towards enterprise production. So we do think there will be some flow down and some shortages caused throughout 2026.
Alice, anything to add?
I think Smith is as being the expert in commodities, and commodities being those exact levels that Tim just mentioned of CPUs, memory and storage devices. We definitely have a very tight wrap around that market as far as knowledge and scope of the market of what we see being short, what we can make risk buys ourselves to hold that product for our customers. So we have got commodity level experts within the company that focus just on those levels, and that helps us a lot as well.
Okay. Question here that has to do with definitions, I think. And how are independent brokers different from an authorized distributor? And how should aerospace and defense companies approach brokers differently from how they might an authorized distributor? Allison, what do you think?
I think it's apples and oranges. An authorized or franchised distributor works directly with a factory that produces the products. They're very limited into thinking outside of the box and offering different ways to come up with a solution. Working with an independent distributor, we're not beholden to one brand. We are not kind of managed by anybody. We're as Tim said earlier, we're also a privately held company. So we have private red tape and not public red tape, which most of your franchise distributors do. In that, franchise distributors, most of the programs that we offer that are value add, as far as inventory hubbing for risk buys and buffer stocks, for BMI, I don't know of any franchise distributor that will actually hold inventory for 2-3 years for a customer and ship out on an as needed basis. They usually tell them, hey, it's an end of life buy and place your order for what you need for your life cycle of the next whatever amount of years you want to support that product, and you need to take all that inventory in now. So they're not very flexible. We're flexible.
Okay, Tim, what do you think?
Sure, and I agree, Allison. We're independent distributors and authorized distributors are apples and oranges, but I do think it has changed quite a bit, right? Throughout the pandemic shortage in 2021 and 2022, defense contractors needed to come more and more to the open market, right? They were not getting support from franchise or from the factory. And I think that defense contractors, supply chains, and quality engineers learned a great deal about working with independent distributors and brokers, where they had more trust in the quality and they understood more about the products that they were able to get. So, I have seen us compete more and more with authorized distributors, not only on day-to-day business, but also some scheduled orders and inventory holding as well. So when independent distributors, when they really grow in size enough, and there are a number of us out there like Smith that are quite large, we do view some of our competitors as those large franchises and authorized distributors as well, where we do want to compete with some of the offerings that they are providing to defense contractors.
Okay. I had a question. Do you work with some of the aftermarket houses like, say, a Rochester Electronics that has not only inventory but limited manufacturing capability? And are they a top of list type resource, or are they more of a last resort? Tim, what do you think?
Sure. Well, yes, we're very well aware of Rochester, and we do work with them quite a bit in buying product from them. We also compete with Rochester on holding programs as well, and working with them. We also compete against Rochester on price quite often, where Rochester is sitting on obsolete inventory, but there are times when we could beat their pricing from open market sources or excess inventory avenues that we're able to tap in. So we both work with them, and we both compete against them when it makes sense as well.
Okay, Allison, anything to add?
I would maybe add to the point Tim mentioned during the presentation of Smith's ability for nitrogen storage for die banking. I think, as far as I know, and I could be wrong, Rochester is the only actual distributor that stores die bank, dies for future use. And Smith holds that capability. I also don't know of any other independent distributor that offers that. But I don't want to say that's factual. I don't believe anybody else does.
Okay, last question. We've got what processes and procedures should supply partners have in place for counterfeit mitigation?
Sure. So, going back to the third-party certifications, right? I mean, that should be a baseline for any independent distributor that you are looking at. Above and beyond that, what type of in-house testing capabilities do they have? Are they able to perform that AS 6171 test procedure in-house? What type of test equipment and investment have they made into their labs? Now, we have a number of defense contractors who have third-party approved test houses that we partner with, and they want all their product tested there. We also have some contractors who have audited Smith both as a distributor and a test house. Now, our test house, it is in-house, but it is a third-party certified test house. So Smith has the capability to not only source, but also test the product in-house to AS 6171. And when required, we also have those third-party partnerships as well, should testing be required to be outsourced.
Okay, Allison,
And those
anything
labs
to add?
those labs are also approved through the Department of Defense. So QTSL and QSLD approval for Smith and for our labs, our testing processes and so forth.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, I say we've run out of questions. So, on behalf of Military and Aerospace Electronics and Endeavor Business Media, I would like to thank today's presenters, Tim McQuaid, Managing Director of Aerospace and Defense Business at Smith, and Allison Levine, Senior Director of Aerospace and Defense at Smith. Thanks for coming. I'm John Keller, Chief Editor of Military and Aerospace Electronics.
Thanks, John.
Thanks,
Thank you.
John. Appreciate it.